Two people start the same job in the same month at the same company. Same title, same salary, $58,000 a year. Same city, same rent, roughly the same age. On paper, there is no difference between them. In 10 years, one of them will have a net worth in the six figures. The other will have less than they started with. Nobody would have predicted it from their resumes. The gap wasn't income. It was never income. It was what happened to the money in the space between getting paid and spending it. Person A gets their first paycheck and feels rich for the first time in their life. They move into a nicer apartment than they need because they can technically afford the rent, and technically affording something becomes the only bar that matters. They upgrade their car 18 months later, financed over 6 years, because the payment fits the budget. Every raise becomes a reason to spend more, not a reason to save more. This isn't recklessness. It's the default setting for almost everyone, because nobody ever taught them that lifestyle inflation is the single most effective wealth-destroying habit that exists, precisely because it feels responsible the whole time it's happening. Person B gets the same paycheck and does something almost boring by comparison. They set up an automatic transfer of $400 into an investment account the same day the paycheck lands, before they see the number in their checking account, before they can talk themselves out of it. They keep the apartment they already had. They keep the car they already had. Their income rises over the next 10 years the exact same way Person A's does, but their spending barely moves. The gap between what they earn and what they spend doesn't shrink as their salary grows. It widens. This is the entire story. Not intelligence, not luck, not some early advantage one of them had that the other didn't. It's the width of the gap between income and spending, and whether that gap is captured or absorbed. Most people's gap gets absorbed instantly, swallowed by a slightly better apartment, a slightly nicer car, dinners out that don't feel like a decision because everyone around them is making the same decision at the same time. The gap that Person B captures doesn't feel dramatic in any single month. $400 invested feels almost pointless the first year. It's not the amount that matters. It's that the amount exists at all, every single month, without fail, regardless of mood, regardless of a good week or a bad one. Year 2 arrives and Person A gets a raise, a good one, an extra $6,000 a year. They don't notice the money arriving so much as they notice it already spent, absorbed into a slightly larger apartment they signed a lease on before the raise even hit, because the raise felt like permission rather than opportunity. Person B gets the same raise and increases their automatic transfer by exactly the same amount the moment it happens, before their monthly budget has time to expand around it. Their lifestyle, from the outside, looks completely unchanged. It is completely unchanged. That is the entire point. If you looked at their social media during these years, you would never guess which one was building anything. Person A posts more, brunches, a weekend trip, a new couch. Person B posts less, not out of secrecy exactly, just because there's less to show. An automatic transfer doesn't photograph well. Nobody has ever taken a picture of a brokerage statement and made it look aspirational. This is part of why the pattern is so hard to interrupt. The behavior that builds wealth is invisible and slightly boring, while the behavior that erodes it is the only one that ever gets photographed. By year 5, Person A has upgraded their lifestyle twice and has roughly $6,000 in savings, most of it sitting in a checking account earning nothing. Person B has never upgraded anything and has $34,000 invested, most of it compounding quietly in the background of a life that looks, from the outside, identical to Person A's. Neither of them talks about money with the other. Neither of them knows the actual numbers behind the other's life. This is important because it means neither of them can learn from what's happening. Wealth building is invisible in real time. You cannot see someone else's automatic transfer. You cannot see someone else's restraint. You can only see the car they drive and the apartment they post from. And both of those are terrible proxies for what's actually happening underneath. Somewhere around year 6, a friend of Person A's mentions, almost in passing, that they just bought a small rental property. Person A is stunned. They had no idea their friend had that kind of money. Their friend, of course, is Person B, and the money didn't appear from nowhere. It appeared because 6 years of an unremarkable $400, then $500, then $650 transfer had quietly turned into a down payment nobody saw coming because nobody was ever meant to see it coming. That's what compounding does when it's left alone. It works in a room nobody's watching, and then one day the door opens and the room is full. By year 8, something starts to shift in Person A, that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with comparison. They start to feel behind, not because their life is bad, but because they sense a gap they can't quite name, a feeling that other people their age seem to be moving towards something while they seem to be standing still. They try to close the gap the way most people do, with a new investment they don't fully understand, chased late, sized too large, sold in a panic 11 months later at a loss. It isn't a lack of intelligence. It's the predictable result of trying to compress 10 years of discipline into a single decision made from anxiety instead of a plan. By year 10, the gap has become impossible to hide anymore, even though nothing dramatic ever happened. There was no single decision, no lottery ticket, no inheritance, no market call that made the difference. There were 120 small decisions, repeated automatically, that either got captured or got absorbed. Compound interest doesn't care which one of them earned more in any given year. It only cares what stayed invested long enough to grow. Person A had 10 years of a decent income and nothing to show for it beyond the things they bought, most of which are now worth less than what they paid. Person B had the same 10 years and built a floor under their entire future, one that keeps growing whether they think about it or not. The uncomfortable part of this story is that Person A was never irresponsible in any way that would show up as a red flag. They paid rent on time, they didn't gamble, they didn't rack up credit card debt they couldn't pay off. They simply let their spending rise every time their income did, which is what almost every financial habit around them was built to encourage, from marketing to social comparison to the simple fact that a nicer life is genuinely more pleasant to live in the moment it's happening. Nobody sends you a warning when lifestyle inflation starts. It just feels like upgrading. It always feels like upgrading, right up until the decade is over and you look back and realize the upgrades were the entire strategy, when they were never supposed to be a strategy at all. This is the real reason most people never build wealth. It was never about how much they made. It was about the automatic decision, made once and repeated without willpower, to let a gap exist between income and spending, and to make sure that gap went somewhere that could grow instead of somewhere that could disappear. Income is the input everyone stares at. The gap is the only variable that ever actually mattered. Somewhere right now, two people just got hired at the same company, for the same salary, in the same week. They have no idea they're about to run this exact experiment on themselves for the next decade, and that the outcome was never going to be decided by their offer letter.